Hey gang, we haven't done a podcast for a long time, so we're going to find our feet again with this, haven't we? I think you're going to find this a really interesting topic. We have been both experiencing freedom in our lives in different ways, and today we were talking about the nature of freedom for yourself, but also the way you respect the freedom of other people. And that freedom is one of those things where it's a state of being within you. And what we'd like to do over the next, in this podcast, is explore it for ourselves, explore it as our own lesson from the heart, so that, like we always do, you can think about the way freedom plays out in your own life. And I think I'll start with this opening, which is that there's someone in my life now where freedom is their greatest value. And there is, as part of that, the way they express that is that at any point in their life, they could be doing A, B, C, or D, right? We all know people that are like that. They're sort of like, and at particular points in their life, they're at crossroads, and you don't know where they're going to be or what they're going to be doing. And to be in relationship with someone who values that so much, you could think is unpredictable. And it reminded me of the fact that when you've got your own inner relationship with freedom, you can work with that in a different way. And what I mean by that is that if the external world if your own internal world is not dependent on the way the external world is, or what it is, and how it is, and the way it shows up, in that you can work with whatever happens and enable the lessons within you, and still be congruent with who you are. You can work with the freedom of others and your own freedom in a way that doesn't create all the emotion, the thinking and emotion stories about what it is and how it's going to affect you. And then that becomes quite a creative process, because you realize that if all possibilities are available and part of the freedom and choice of other people, then it's sort of like, oh, what's going to show up? How's this going to play out? And what's going to play out here? So I think I'd encourage you to sort of consider how you work with freedom within your own life, and then how do you, within yourself, respect and work with the freedom of other people.
Yeah, so to pick up on that, this freedom conversation between Andrew and I before the podcast came from us talking about being our authentic selves, and we talked about how that plays out, and then we sort of evolved into what freedom is for each of us individually. And for me, it's the ability to have options. So I can have options, I can choose, but it's the foundational component of that is really being authentic and understanding what authentic means for you, so that you can then make those decisions about yourself and not be impacted by the external world in you making your decisions. And that's been quite amazing in particularly in the last few weeks. It's coming to the end of the year for me from a client-facing work, which is it's a nice feeling, because I've got a few weeks now to do other stuff work-wise. So that's been good, and that's been intentional. I could have tried to find work for December, but that doesn't always work very well anyway. People are starting to go on to thinking about holidays and so on. So I've gone about my work calendar, my own personal calendar, around, this lead up into December and into January of freeing up the time for myself.
Yeah.
Which again is a freedom of choice, and I have been able to do that, and that also brings in a whole lot of other things like gratitude. I'm grateful for the things that I've tried to put in place, my intentions that I put out there, and now I'm starting to see some of those results, and a lot of them are really good results. So freedom has really been playing up on my mind for particularly over the last few weeks. I've had a couple of conversations with colleagues around this as well, and how that's playing out for them, and what the consequences are of being in that freedom yourself, that inner freedom, and how that changes your outlook, and it also changes how you can adapt to things that are coming up. You don't get impacted in the same way, which is really a much more relaxed or less stressful way of being.
So I really like that, and I think that connection with authenticity is really powerful. So I think the question always comes up, which is that then, if we think about freedom as options and having the worthiness within you to respect your own options, and to pursue those options in an authentic way, right? The things that you want to do in your own life, and that freedom is an awareness of all the potential, and that you can run those two not as mutually exclusive, but as one particular system where you feel free to pursue a wide potential of things, but you're also in touch with who you are authentically. The thing that I was thinking about is that most people feel like, or they don't have the space in their lives to ever connect with what that is. Like it's almost like they're pursuing all the stuff that they think they want. And it feels like freedom, but then it's sort of following a pattern of someone else's life, or an image of how they think a life should be. And you see that play out in, and I've done that at times as well, where you feel like you're following each other's lives, someone else's life. So I think the way that works within me is that I pretty deeply listen to my own intuition and my own energy. So and it's kind of as simple as if something lights me up, that's sort of the freedom path I'll pursue.
Gives you the sign.
That gives me the sign. I think that's probably different for you. I think you're more logical, a bit more logical than me. Like, I'm probably more intuitive. But I think that the point I'm making is that in pursuing what freedom is and having the freedom, it can feel choiceless. Like, it can feel like there's too much choices. But the authenticity piece brings it back to allowing you're worthy enough to follow your own freedom.
And what that does is that puts boundaries back into play.
Yes, that's right.
So you think freedom just removes boundaries. It doesn't. No. If you attach that with authenticity,
that's right.
Because you're then understanding that there are the freedom of choice actually allows you to say no to things as well. And that's actually more freeing, which seems crazy.
It is. So freedom is very directly connected to boundaries. Because every time you go against that natural authenticity of the thing you want to do, and you compromise on that to please other people, or to be out of fear because you're worried about something will go on, it's a signal to the world you're not worthy enough of your own freedom, of your own options, of your own stuff, and that will always, of the things that you want within you. And that's not what we're all after.
And particularly if we're going to put our intentions out there. So you put your intentions out there, and you have to accept the consequences, as we've talked about in previous sessions. And knowing that, knowing your authentic self, or getting to know your authentic self, and understanding the boundaries that you want to put in place for that, that allows freedom to be wider ranging but narrow at the same time. It doesn't sound quite right, but it's not restrictive, but it's definitive. Yeah.
So I think the other element I add to this is that there are probably two places where freedom can exist, and they're all one, but these two things coexist together. There's external freedom, where you feel like you've got all the freedoms we talk about, right? So geographic freedom, financial freedom, what else? Emotional freedom, all those elements, right? That they're talked about by all the coaches and all the dudes out there. But the piece that people don't talk about is then the inner freedom, which is that the true freedom is that you are within you, free from identifying yourself as the external, and that you are free and at peace within you and comfortable enough with yourself that you can allow that external to not impact that sense of who you are.
Yeah.
And we were talking before about the fact that we think there's a relationship between what we did in season 1, where we were able to clearly both learn the lesson about the inner reality and the outer reality, and that to get to a point where we could find and see that actually what we were was the inner reality. And that once you get to that place, that allows you to feel so comfortable with yourself that you can start to create those freedoms on the outside, because you're not dependent on them for your sense of self. Yeah. And so your sense of center starts to create that freedom outside of you, because you're not trying to force it to be free.
Exactly.
You're just happy with who it is.
Yeah. And also, it also allows you not to use those external, whatever happens, as excuses for how you behave or how you are. And that's a freedom in itself. And it's a lovely place to be. The other part to that, and there's a proviso always, is that you're still challenged all the time.
Yeah.
But when you're coming from that internal way of being, that the authentic way that you want to live your life, it just makes things a little clearer, or not necessarily easier, because it can be really hard to work your way through it. But you're able to deconstruct it and come back to what the core influence or matter is, and how you want to work your way through it. Yeah.
So I think the final point around freedom is you've got the freedom to comment on this video, to say whatever you like.
Yeah. And we have the freedom to put the boundaries in place too.
So yeah, wherever you're listening to it, we hope you have a great day, and and this gives you a sense of what freedom means to you. So take care.
Till next time.
Bye.